Editor.js is what you see is what you get editor. If you are creating a content editor or CMS for creating something like blog posts where you can visually edit content, add text, headings, images, etc. Editor.js is a great tool for that. It's a block style editor and it outputs the data in JSON format. And it's really easy to implement. You can install it using npm, or you can also use the CDN if you want to. Here I have a vanilla.js project. Let's install editor.js using this command. Plus we'll also install the header block. The basic editor has only the paragraph block, so if you need things like headings, images, lists, you have to install those blocks separately. So after the installation, let's set up the editor. In HTML, all you need is a div with an ID editor.js. This is where the actual editor will be added by editor.js from JavaScript. Then in your JavaScript, import the editor.js class and initialize it with an object. You can configure the editor using this object. Now with just this code, you already have the basic editor setup. We can go in the browser and here we have the editor. I can type some text here. You will have to style it a little bit so it's properly visible. If you want to use a different ID instead of the default one, you can do it using this config object by setting the holder property to your custom ID. Now any element with this ID will be used as a holder for the editor. This is useful if you have multiple editors on the same page. You can create two div elements and give them to different IDs, then set them as holder for two editors. Now let's see how you can configure extra blocks to use in the editor. So we have installed the header block. To configure it, we have to import it. In the configuration object, you can use the tools property, give it an object, and here name your block, let's say header, and give it the header class that we imported. And now we will be able to use the header block. Press the plus button and here we have the option to add the heading. If you need to specify settings for these blocks, you can use an object and set the class property to the header blocks class. Then you can define any settings that this block has. For example, there is an inline toolbar which you can enable by setting inline toolbar property to true. Inline toolbar allows you to format inline text in blocks. If I select a piece of text here, we get the inline toolbar. You can make this text bold, italic, or turn it into a link. If you want only a specific options in this toolbar, you can use an array with list of options you want. As you can see, now we only get the link option. Now let's see how to save the content. I'll create a button and add an event listener on it. So when we click it, we want to get the data and send it to the backend. To get the JSON data, we can use the save method on this editor instance. It will return a promise, so you can use then method to get the JSON data and use the catch method to handle errors. We'll just log the data. In an actual application, you would send it to the backend using the fetch method. So here, if I press save, I get the data here. Next, let's see how to load this data in editor. When you have saved the data in the database and you want to edit that saved data, you will need to get it from your backend and put inside the editor. So let's see how to do that. Let's take this data and put it in a variable here. Assume that you have fetched this data from the backend. Now to load it in the editor, you just set it to the data property in this config object and it will put that content in the editor. Now let's understand this JSON data so you can read it and render your content from this data. So in this JSON, you have a time property, which is the time you saved this data, and you have blocks, which is an array of objects, and each object is the block that you added in the content. Blocks are in the same order as they are in your content. As you can see, we have the heading first, then the paragraph text. Now each of these blocks has an ID, type and data property. This type's value is actually the name you gave to this block when you configured it in JavaScript. So for header block, we named it header. Whatever you name here will be the type of that block in this JSON. Then there's data. So the header block has text, which is the actual text content of this block, and level, which indicates the heading's hierarchy, whether it's top level heading or a subheading. The paragraph block has only text property, so based on the type of block, this data will be different. You can refer to the documentation of the block you are using to see what this data contains, and that's all you need to understand this JSON data. Now let's see a simple example of how you would use this to render HTML. So I'm going to use PHP. We have this JSON data as a string, so just decode it to get it as an object. Now you simply loop through blocks array and check the type of block using if statement or a switch statement, and just output the HTML for that block. So for header, we output h1 with the text from data property. You can check the level of heading and based on that output h1 for level 1, h2 for level 2 and so on. For paragraph, we just output a p tag with its text. If we check in the browser, here we have the content rendered from the JSON data. So that's it. That's the basics of editor.js.